Hello everyone. Thank you for making time to attend this event. Thank you React Mumbai for giving us this opportunity to connect with this amazing crowd here. And welcome you all to ThoughtWorks. So something about ThoughtWorks, basically code pairing is something which is very close to our heart. And that's what it's very evident right now because if you see, we both are pairing even for this session. So, okay, that's a little bit about ThoughtWorks. Okay, before I start the session, just a quick hands up who all are working professionals at the moment. Okay, and who are students right now, just learning? Okay, the reason for this is we'll craft our session in such a way that we can keep it as basic as possible so that every individual here would be able to understand. Okay, we'll start. So thank you. Just a second. Okay. So thank you Divyanshu for that very interesting talk on Web Vital. So that is something which is very critical from a front-end aspect, and today our talk is basically we are going to touch on one of the optimization techniques which will basically help you to optimize your front end even on a better scale, and indirectly will help you to increase your Web Vital scores. So summary of today's talk is we will be starting with a couple of important concepts. Then we will be touching upon what is code splitting and why we need it. Towards the end, we will show a small demo where we will be showing you how it exactly works, and you will be able to visualize as to whatever we are going to be talking in next few or half an hour. Okay, let's start. So how many of you know CSR strategy? Client-side rendering strategy. Anyone can tell me what does it do? In their own words, anything is fine.
Basically, all your client-facing fields will become on the browser side, and the interaction will be kept on the server side.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, just a bit tweak to that. So, what is client-side rendering is your entire JavaScript gets bundled up and downloaded on your browser. So, when we refer to as a client, we mean browser. Okay. So, your browser gets all the capabilities as to like navigation, business logic, everything, right? So that is basically client-side rendering. So you're rendering everything on the client side, and server just acts as a data giving entity. So let's see what are the 4 stages of client-side rendering. First one, is the slide visible towards the end, people? Okay, thank you. So first stage is basically, so this here is the client, which is nothing but the browser. Client requests server for a particular resource, right? That is something which happens as the first stage. In the next stage, browser basically downloads that particular JS which is received from the server. That's the second stage. In the third stage, browser basically executes the React part of the JavaScript bundle that it has downloaded. And in the last stage, your front end or your UI actually becomes interactable for the user to manipulate. So if you see in these 4 stages, each stage has its own time consumption, and if not dealt properly, it can increase your initial load time to a next level. Okay, so this is something which we need to take care of from the start itself. We can't just complete the whole app, go to production, and the next day say, okay, I'll think about initial load now. That's not how it does. Okay, next important topic is bundling. What is bundling? So most of the front end nowadays apps use some kind of bundling tool. Common are Webpack, Rollup. So what does these bundlers do? These bundlers basically bundle all your JavaScript that you have written. Your React components gets converted into a JavaScript, and that entire JavaScript gets bundled up into one single bundle. That bundle gets served to your user whenever the initial load request is made. Okay. So earlier, what used to happen, like a traditional web app, there used to be multiple pages. Each page used to have their own JS file, own CSS, own HTML. So whenever I am requesting for, say, suppose profile.html, my individual profile.js, individual profile.css, and similarly other scripts were getting downloaded. But now, since frontend has become more advanced, like the browser has got a lot of capabilities in it, so a lot of things which used to happen on server side now has been attracted back to your frontend, which is basically your browser. So now there was a need that we just can't keep on with the latest frameworks that are in place, right, which is React and Angular. They came up with a strategy that we create just one bundle and serve it as a request to any user who comes to the particular site. So with this invent of creating one bundler, Webpack and everyone came into picture where they help us with bundling this process. So bundling basically will compile all your JavaScript bundle which you have, different JavaScript files, into one single bundle, and it will be served to your user on first load request. Now, let's understand what is code splitting and why we need it. So once we start a project, right, we have some initial setup. Then as and when new requirement comes up, we keep on adding new features, new architectures, and it indirectly you keep on adding new dependencies, right? So as the code in your code base increases, you keep on adding dependencies, then that basically what will do is it will increase the JavaScript bundle, that final JavaScript bundle that will be created, which will be the combination of all these dependencies. Now imagine that your main bundle has become 30 MB. Okay, it should not be the case, I am just giving an example. So suppose your bundle is 30 MB, right? The moment your user comes to your web page, the first load, your entire 30 MB will be downloaded. That's pretty concerning, right? As a user, you will just be waiting with a loader on your screen and thinking, is there something wrong with my network connection? But no, that's not the case. It's something wrong with the developer implementation, right? So it's very important that we come up with some strategy that we can ship less JavaScript at the first go, so that your time to interaction, as the web vital says, the TTI, the time to interaction is very less, right? So the moment your JavaScript initial size is less, only serve that thing which is needed by the browser, then your time to interaction, like the interaction where the user can actually start doing, that will be pretty much faster. So this is where code splitting comes into picture, where we split our bundles in such a way that only serve user what is needed to be shown on the first interaction, and rest everything can come whenever user demands. Okay? This is one of the example of how bundling works. Just a second. So if you see, now there are two modules here. One is app.js and the next one is math.js. So when the actual bundling will happen, it would look something like the last diagram, which is nothing but the addition of both the modules. So imagine if you are using a lot of third-party libraries, right? Then everything, your last bundle will look like the third diagram, which will have all your JavaScript from your third party and including what you have in your existing code base. So the key to code splitting is, it is not that okay, there is like a disclaimer here. We should not do code splitting too much. You should only do it in places where it will actually, it's affecting your performance. Like you should not do that every component is just lazy loading and things are happening in haywire. That should not be the case. Only the places where you feel it could improve your performance, you should deal with care. So in this diagram, if you see, the traditional web, whenever you used to make any request, you used to just get HTML, CSS and JavaScript related to that page only. But now, after 2019 or after React came in, Now, whenever browser makes a request, though it gets HTML and CSS, but it gets a huge chunk of JavaScript. Now, if this size of this JavaScript is not handled properly, then you could end up losing a lot of customers. So many studies has also shown that anything that loads within 3 seconds has a higher chance that you can convert that customer into a actual lead. Okay? And if anything that takes more than 3 seconds, then definitely that's a turn off for any user. No user is gonna waste his precious 3 seconds just to see some content of your website that he even might be not aware of. If a person is aware of something, then he might wait, okay, I know something is gonna load. But if a person is attending your site for the first time, he will not be knowing what exactly is gonna load. So he's not gonna waste his precious 3 or 4 seconds. So that is why code splitting becomes important. Now let's try to understand here how we can split our code in an effective manner that we can achieve front-end optimization. Let's start with the first one. Split and reduce your bundles. So first point is we should get rid of anything that takes up too much of space. Okay, and if you see in the examples below, we should try to use packages or dependencies that are less in size. So how this will help is, it will help in your final bundling, right? When you create a production build, it will automatically help you to reduce your size if you are using a low size package. Every time you just add a dependency, make sure that you check it on Bundlephobia. There are many other sites as well where you can check the size of a package and include it only if it has a understandable size, right? Also, one more thing, it's a bit out of this topic, but if you are able to avoid any particular dependency, you should absolutely do that. Reason for saying that is, whenever we add a dependency to your project, you're basically inviting other project bugs also to your project. Okay? So it's important that if you can avoid, try writing on your own. If you can avoid a dependency, well and good. If not a problem, but just a caveat to this. Next one, we should. Okay, so what is tree shaking? I'll explain that first. Tree shaking is a process where you eliminate the dead code, which is part of the code base. So when you create a final bundle file, whatever functions, so suppose there's a third party library. Let's take an example of Lodash. Okay, everyone knows Lodash. Lodash, whoever doesn't know, Lodash is a util kind of a package which gives you a lot of utility functions like find, get, something like that. So it's not going to be the case that you will be using entire Lodash, all the functions in your project. You would be requiring couple of them or maybe 10, not more than that, right? But if you include Lodash directly as a package dependency, you are basically importing all the functions which are there as part of that particular package. So it's important that we can use this particular strategy here, Lodash/find. So here, whenever compiler comes to this particular line, what it will do is, it will include only find function and whatever is a dependency of that find function in your final bundle, right? If you do the last step, which is like this, something like this, there are other ways also, but just for an example I have shown. So if you do import in this way, then basically you're telling your compiler that whatever Lodash has, I want everything. Whether I'm using it or not, I don't care, I want everything. So compiler is not going to tell you, okay, why are you doing this? Because it is not his job. It is your job to understand what needs to be done and what needs to be avoided. So be a smart dev, use the first strategy, avoid the last one. Then there are a lot of low weight libraries like we know what moment.js is. It's a date conversion library or date utility library. But there are other low size or low kind of libraries are also there, which is datefns. Something similar to moment, but has a lesser size. Similar to Lodash, we have something called as Lodash-ES, which is again a lighter version of the actual Lodash that we have. Okay, moving on to the next one, dynamic imports. Anyone here who knows what dynamic import is? Just a one-liner would do. Yes, sir. Your good name? Ashwat, yeah, please.
Dynamic import lets you import a module at runtime. Instead of importing it at the top of at the module level, you instead use a promise base.
Perfect, sir. You got it right. So what is dynamic import? As the name suggests, it's pretty evident. We are going to dynamically import some particular thing. Now let's see how this works. Let's focus on the first diagram towards the top right corner. You see, I'll just summarize what exactly is happening here. So at the top, there is an import of a library, of a module, okay? It's an external third-party library. In the second, you have a form which basically has a submit event. So you have some example kind of a form, some registration form or something. And on the submit event, basically we are calling a function named as sum function. And in the third, you see the sum function is actually going to use that particular module. So now when compiler is creating Webpack is creating a bundle for this, what it will do, it will scan the first line, it will see that you need this library. So it will immediately add all the library functions, whatever it has, as part of your bundle. Then it will come to the second line, add that particular piece of code, and then the third line. So this way we are telling compiler that I need library as a third party dependency upfront only. Whether user is going to use it or not, that is not my problem. You just import it at the front itself. So compiler will bundle everything and you will be presented with a huge chunk of JavaScript. Now let's focus on the second code here. In the second code, if you see, now there is no import at the top. So when a bundle is created, compiler will see there is no import at the top, so nothing will get added. It will come to this first line, which is form.add event. It will add that into your bundle and then the next line. Now, whenever user does a submit event, immediately if you see the first line, which is import, in that import we are passing the actual module that we want to import, right? And then it's basically import returns a promise, so we'll have to add a dot then, which will give us the once the module gets downloaded, you will get a callback in your then function. Similarly, you have catch if you want to catch any particular error. Same, you can write with async await also, nothing like that. This is a bit more structured, that's why I have included it here. So now what this tells the compiler, that though my initial bundle doesn't have library as the third party dependency, now when the user submits on that event, immediately this module will be downloaded. So in your browser network, in the JS tab, you can clearly see a separate chunk of bundle got downloaded, which was not part of your initial bundle size. Okay, so this is how you can reduce your initial load time by differing things which are not required upfront. If you clearly see, module A library was not required by the user upfront when the page loaded. It was only needed when user was supposed to submit that particular page. So you have to be smart enough and modularize your code in such a way that you can improve your TTI, time to interaction. Give only those things to the user that is needed and defer things for the last whenever it is required by the user, on demand basically. Now I would like to call upon my colleague Bhargav here. He will be taking you through the next slides. Bhargav, over to you.
Thanks, Yuvraj. Everyone, if you understood dynamic imports, can I have a raise of hands? Okay, everyone did. We have a smart audience.
Thank you.
So, we'll talk about React Lazy. Now, in the previous slides, we saw how we can import a module dynamically. There was one problem though. If you remember the code snippet from last slide, it was a add listener and then you were doing it. It was an imperative piece of code, right? But in React, we don't write code as much like that. You render components in React. So if you look at this slide, I want a avatar component and this component is lazily loaded. So React exposes this util called lazy, which is a wrapper around this dynamic import, which lets you declaratively write components that are lazily loaded. So just syntax wise, it's pretty straightforward. If anyone has a question, I'll answer it, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Do you want me to explain it? No one says yes. Okay. All right. We'll move on to suspense. Okay. Now, since we are lazily importing something, there is an inherent problem with web, right? You get something from the server, that means you have to wait, which means on the UI, you have to handle all these ephemeral states. There is an initial state, there is a loading state, then either you will get the response or there may be an error. So you have to handle all of these. So we were able to render a lazily loaded component, but what about while it is loading? How do we handle that? So there is a util that is built by React core team, which is called Suspense, which lets you do it. Suspense, what you do is basically you wrap your lazily loaded component with a suspense, and it takes a fallback, it takes a prop called fallback, which would just render a loader. Whatever you pass that would be the loader, which would render while it is still loading. In terms, like in the React world, this is said as until avatar component is ready, the rendering is suspended. This is how they speak the language. Now, what if we had multiple components? What if there were, now if you look at this piece of code, avatar info component and more info component, they're all lazy components. Now, if they're all lazily loaded, what if I want to wait for all of them to load before I want to render them? You can simply just wrap all three of them in a single suspense. So that means until all three of them are not loaded, you'll still continue to see the loading UI, whatever you have as a loading UI. This is visible, right? Font size is okay for everyone? Okay. And there's a flip side to this, right? What if I have lazy imports, but I want them to be rendering separately? You simply just render all of them with their own wrapped suspense. Right. We'll move to route-based code splitting. Now, while the previous example that I showed, it showed multiple lazy loaded components. In a real world, you wouldn't really do that, right? You wouldn't have avatar and info loaded as separate components. A more real world splitting of bundles would be maybe page-based. So if you look at this code snippet, here we have a simple page which has two routes, one is home and one is blog. The home route is the default route, and both of these are lazily loaded components. So this way you can handle your loading throughout the app, like your loading is integrated with your routing in a way. So anytime a transition happens while the browser is still getting the other pages bundle, you will see the loader. And in the future, if you keep adding more routes, it would still work. So it's a cleaner way to handle this. Now we've seen, like we saw how we can split our bundles, and we've improved the initial experience for the user, right? They don't have to wait as much. We're only loading the things that they really need to see the first page for them to use whatever you are building. But with this, we've introduced another problem. Now, when the user clicks on the other tab, let's say the blog tab, the blog needs to be downloaded again. So that means the user didn't wait in the beginning, but now he has to wait later on when he clicks on the blog tab. So how do we optimize this bundle download timing? We'll talk a little bit about that. So browsers have something called as resource hint. So let's say I'll take an example from Yuvraj's code piece. There was a form submit event, right? Let's say on form submit there is a modal coming up, and you want that, but you don't. The modal only comes when the form submit is clicked. So if you want to save that time, right, you can add a prefetch. So what prefetch means is basically once the browser has finished downloading everything that it needs to render the first page, when it becomes idle, it has nothing else to do, it will download this. Because we think that the user is very likely to do this, so we tell the browser, once you are done with the initial work, then download this. So if you mark let's say that modal rendering JS chunk, if you mark that as prefetch, the browser will download it, and when the user clicks it, it will be immediately visible. So the way you do that is, when you are doing a dynamic import, just add a comment webpack prefetch is true just before your name of the bundle. So this way Webpack will add the required directive when it adds the link tag in the head of your index. There is one catch to this though. Not all browsers support this. For example, prefetching is not supported by Safari. So while it's great to use this as a performance optimization, your functionality should not depend on this. Otherwise, your users won't be able to use it for some browsers where it's not supported. There is another way of handling this, which is called preloading. How it is different from prefetching is, let's discuss this with an example. Let's say you have a page. When you land on the page, there is a chart, okay, and the chart depends on a charting library. The charting library is very heavy. So if you mark, so what would happen normally is that your entire bundle, if you have not done any kind of splitting, your entire initial bundle will be downloaded, and until that point there will be nothing that the user will see. But if you mark that charting library as a preload, what would happen is, as soon as your page loads, the charting library load will start, but the page will start rendering. So at least there is something that the user will see. Maybe you can have a shell on the page. So at least the perceived performance is better. User feels that, okay, the app is almost there. And then the charting library would be ready. Once it is ready, it will be visible. So the way you, how do you use this is, while you are doing a dynamic import, just add webpack preload is true before the name of the bundle, and that will take care of it. Preloading is not supported in IE 11. I hope you don't use IE, but if you do, it's not supported.
Please avoid IE.
And we'll move to the demo part now. Over to you, Yuvraj.
Thank you, Bhargav. Okay, so we heard a lot of information, but let's see what exactly we were talking about. So I have two apps running here. The first app is a normal web app without code splitting. There is no piece of code splitting, trust me when I'm saying this. There is nothing there here. And in the second app, here basically we have everything related to code splitting that we just talked about. We have route based, we have dynamic imports, and we have component level of lazy loading, right? So let's see how the first app behaves, which doesn't have code splitting at all, right? I have disabled cache here, so we'll see everything loading from scratch every time, okay? And I have enabled the JS tab, so we just see what JS bundle is getting downloaded, right? Now I'm just refreshing this. Are the numbers visible in the network tab towards the last, people? No? Now? Okay, awesome. Even I can see now. Okay, so basically if you see what I just did, I just reloaded the entire page. Okay, nothing I did. I am not clicked on any button, nothing. Just a simple reload. Focus on this indicator here. 2.4 MB of data got downloaded. Now you will ask me, what is this 2.4 MB? So I have added few dependencies which are huge in size. I have added React PDF, then I have a few Lottie animations behind the scenes, okay? So that everything sums up to 2.4 MB. So imagine if you had your website which had around 10 MB of size. Just see, it took 3.67 milliseconds to load this one. Now if you have 10 or 20 MB, this will easily take up to 1 or 2 seconds, okay? And if it increases even beyond, it will take like 5 to 6 seconds to just load your initial bundle size and your user can actually start interacting, right? Now let me go inside. I'll click on this page. I'll come back to the statistics. So if you see, I have 4 tabs here. First tab loads React PDF, which is some dummy content, nothing created by us. In the second tab, we have a Lottie animation, and similarly following, we have few more Lottie animations, right? So if you notice now, even though I navigated to these tabs, but still nothing is getting downloaded because my initial bundle size was 2.4. Everything is already present on your client, which is browser right now. So you don't need to make any kind of server request. Everything is available, just serve it to your user, right? This is how a normal app behaves. Now let's switch on to an app which has code splitting in place, right? So now again same thing. I have disabled cache and I'm just loading the JS tab. I'll just do a refresh. There you see. What is the initial bundle size? Just 432 KB. Now imagine I gave you an example of 30-40 MB of initial size. Imagine how much time you're gonna save. Even look at the time. It took 360 milliseconds on the first page, on the first tab, but here you see just 92 milliseconds, right? The moment you did refresh, your content was available to you. That is what any user would love to see, right? Now let's go inside this application and I'll show you what exactly will happen now. Now if you see, 2 bundles got downloaded. I'll show you the names also. First bundle basically is dashboard.js. So this is nothing but my dashboard.js. So that is behind a particular route, right? And that route is behind code splitting right now, lazy loading. So it created a separate chunk for it, like a separate JavaScript bundle. And it downloaded only when I went to dashboard.js. My initial load did not have dashboard.js at all, right? Suppose if a user never requested for dashboard.js, so it was never served in your initial bundle also. So this way you have reduced your initial load time. Again, if you see, the first tab is automatically populated. That's why you see here another chunk got downloaded immediately, which is nothing but PDF document. It's visible. Oh, it's not visible. Okay, trust me, it is known as PDF document. Okay. Now, similarly, if I go to the next tabs, again, if you see, separate JavaScript bundle is getting downloaded, which is nothing but Lottie animation. Again, it's not visible, trust me. The last one is nothing but the asset, the actual Lottie animation JSON file. So this JSON file was downloaded using dynamic imports. So now anything I do, which is behind a lazy import, everything will have a separate JavaScript file. So you're basically not giving anything to your user unless and until user is requesting for it, right? So this way you can modularize your code base such that your initial load time reduces as to how we saw 432 KB and just 92 milliseconds, right? This is precious for any company so that they can convert their user to an actual lead, right? So this is how you can implement code splitting and take advantage of it in real world scenarios. That's it, the end.